That's much more horrible than what I had done, in the first third of Jaws. And I just didn't like it. It was too bloody, and I thought it was in bad taste, so I cut it out.
When Jaws terrified audiences in 1975, it became a cinematic legend. But few people realized the version that reached theaters was not the most shocking one.
I was going to be a victim in the estuary. Well, what happened in that scene is, it was so violent and so horrendous that they couldn't use it. It was just too violent, period.
Buried behind studio decisions, rewrites, and last-minute changes was an original story far darker, more disturbing, and far more controversial than anything audiences ever saw. Characters behaved differently, secrets were more sinister, and the horror cut much deeper than a giant shark lurking beneath the waves. So what was removed? Why was it erased? And how different was the real Jaws from the classic we know today? The Lost Nightmare of Jaws. 50 years after Jaws first frightened audiences around the world, new behind-the-scenes information shows that the movie was once planned to be much darker and far more disturbing than the version that people eventually saw in cinemas. Before the final version was locked in, director Steven Spielberg and his team had already filmed several scenes that went much further in tone and intensity, showing more graphic shark attacks, stronger violence, and disturbing moments that almost changed how the entire film would be classified and received. Some of these deleted ideas were so intense that they risked pushing the movie toward a harsher rating, which could have affected its box office success. The studio and filmmakers had to carefully balance fear and realism with what audiences could handle at the time. One of the most talked-about lost scenes is the paddleboat attack sequence. In this version, a man tries to rescue young Michael Brody, only to be suddenly attacked by the shark. Instead of a quick disappearance, the victim is pulled underwater while still alive, with chaos unfolding around the terrified witnesses. Steven Spielberg eventually decided that this sequence went too far. He felt that showing such extreme violence would take away from the film's carefully built suspense and emotional tension. By removing it, he shifted the focus back to fear, imagination, and what the audience could not see. What was once meant to be one of the most shocking moments in Jaws history was ultimately cut from the film. Today, it survives only in discussions, production notes, and the legend of what the movie could have been if that darker vision had been allowed to remain. Even today, film historians and fans continue to wonder how different Jaws would feel if these darker scenes had been included in the final cut. Many believe the movie's power comes from what is not shown, but imagining these deleted moments adds a new layer of fear and curiosity about what was left behind. The idea that an even more terrifying version once existed but was carefully removed makes the film's history even more fascinating, especially when considering how close audiences came to seeing something far more intense on screen. Instead of weakening the legend of Jaws, the existence of these lost scenes actually strengthens it, turning the film into something even more mysterious and endlessly discussed across generations of viewers and filmmakers. Ultimately, the story behind the deleted material reminds us that even iconic films often have hidden versions that never reach the audience, shaped by difficult choices about fear, storytelling, and what people are ready to experience at the time, and what audiences can handle. Despite how terrifying Jaws is, some of its most graphic shark attack scenes were ultimately removed to avoid causing extreme panic among viewers. But why were they so easily cut? Does this mean little effort went into filming them, or were they actually the result of intense work that was later set aside for the audience's comfort? Let's uncover the disappointing details. The bold choice behind Jaws. Removing these scenes was not a simple or quick decision, and it came with real disappointment behind the camera. The special effects team had spent countless hours designing and building the shark effects meant for the more intense attack sequences. Every movement, every mechanical detail, and every underwater shot required careful planning and long days of hard work. For many of the crew members, those deleted scenes represented pride in their craft, and seeing them cut from the final film felt like watching a major part of their effort disappear. It was not just about footage being removed, it was about losing moments they had worked so hard to bring to life. Still, Steven Spielberg had to think beyond the effort that had gone into filming. He had to think about how the movie would feel to the audience sitting in the theater, experiencing it for the first time with no behind-the-scenes knowledge at all. In that moment, he made a bold and unusual choice that would later become one of the most important decisions in the film's success. Instead of relying on showing every violent or graphic detail of the shark attacks, he chose to pull back. He reduced what was seen on screen and placed more focus on what was not seen. He paid close attention to the characters' reactions, their fear, their confusion, and the rising tension that built up before and after each attack. He also leaned heavily into uncertainty, allowing the audience's imagination to fill in the gaps. This meant that the shark itself was often hidden or only partly revealed, and the true horror lived in the moments of silence, the ripples in the water, and the terrified faces of those on screen. Over time, this creative decision completely changed how Jaws worked as a film. Instead of being just another monster story filled with constant action, it became something far more powerful and lasting. It turned into a lesson in suspense, showing that fear does not always need to be fully shown to be deeply felt. In fact, what people cannot clearly see often becomes even more frightening in their minds. By trusting the audience's imagination, Spielberg transformed the movie into a psychological experience rather than just a visual one. This approach proved that holding back can sometimes create stronger emotions than showing everything directly. What was once seen as a loss of exciting scenes eventually became the secret ingredient that made Jaws unforgettable, influential, and still discussed decades later as a perfect example of how less can truly become more when it comes to fear and storytelling. The more graphic version of Jaws was ultimately cut to spare viewers from an overwhelming level of fear. But did the version that finally made it to the screen still achieve the director's intended impact? Or did it leave audiences terrified as well? If so, how frightening was the final cut that audiences actually saw? Let's find out. When silence became terror. Ironically, the decision to remove the most graphic and violent scenes from Jaws did not make the film feel safer or less scary. In fact, it had the exact opposite effect. When the movie was finally released in 1975, it did not just entertain audiences, it unsettled them in a way few films had ever done before. Fear seemed to travel far beyond the cinema screens and into everyday life. People left theaters looking at the ocean differently, as if something unseen might be waiting just below the surface. A Gallup survey after Jaws came out showed that many viewers called it the scariest film they had ever seen. Even more surprising, millions said it changed how they viewed the ocean. What once felt calm, fun, and relaxing suddenly felt dangerous and uncertain, as fear of what might be hidden beneath the waves stayed with them long after watching. A big reason for this lasting fear was not what the film showed, but what it carefully chose not to show. The suspense, the slow build-up, the deep silence before an attack, and the unforgettable two-note music all worked together to create a feeling of danger that never fully disappeared. The shark often remained hidden, and that unknown presence made the threat feel even larger in the minds of the audience. Long after the credits rolled, many viewers still felt tense, as if the danger had not completely gone away. The reaction to the film became so strong that even medical professionals and researchers began to take notice. In one widely discussed case, a teenage viewer reportedly suffered intense anxiety and trouble sleeping after watching Jaws. Stories like this led psychologists to study the film as an example of how movies can trigger real emotional and physical stress responses in people. It showed that cinema is not just entertainment. It can deeply affect how the human mind reacts to fear. Over the years, Jaws has continued to be studied as one of the clearest examples of a thriller shaping real-world behavior. It proved that fear does not always come from what is clearly seen on screen, but often from what is suggested and left to the imagination. In many ways, What Steven Spielberg left out of the film became more powerful than anything he put in. The unseen shark, the hidden danger, and the audience's own imagination combined to create a fear that felt personal, real, and unforgettable. Even decades later, the film still stands as a reminder that sometimes the mind is the most frightening place of all, when it is left to fill in the blanks. Beyond leaving some shark attack scenes to the audience's imagination, was fear the only reason they weren't fully shown? Or did mechanical problems also play a role in that decision? Let's delve into the astonishing details. The broken monster that made history. Ironically, one of the main reasons so much planned footage was cut from Jaws had nothing to do with creative choice at first. It was a technical problem that kept getting worse. The crew had built a full-sized mechanical shark for the film, affectionately nicknamed Bruce. It was meant to be the star of the movie, a terrifying creature that would appear in many underwater attack scenes. But from the very beginning, Bruce was unreliable. The ocean itself became its worst enemy. Saltwater began to damage the internal systems, causing constant breakdowns. Instead of smoothly performing on cue, the machine often failed at the worst possible moments, leaving the crew unable to film important scenes. What was supposed to be a groundbreaking piece of film technology quickly turned into a daily challenge. Every time the team prepared for a shark attack sequence, there was a risk that Bruce would stop working again. Hours of planning would collapse because the machine refused to cooperate. Frustration grew on set as the production schedule kept shifting, and scenes that were carefully designed had to be delayed or completely abandoned. At first, this seemed like a disaster. A film about a giant shark that could barely show its shark felt like it was falling apart. But Steven Spielberg began to adjust his approach instead of giving up. Since he could not rely on the mechanical shark appearing often or behaving consistently, he started to focus more on building tension in different ways. He used music, camera angles, underwater shots, floating objects, and the reactions of the characters to suggest the presence of the shark without always showing it directly. The danger was still there, but it lived in the imagination rather than on the screen. Over time, this unexpected problem completely changed how the movie felt. Instead of seeing the shark again and again, viewers were left in suspense, always waiting and guessing what might be hiding under the water. Their imagination did most of the work, filling in the fear of the unknown. And when the shark finally appeared, even briefly, it felt far more powerful and terrifying because the audience had been held in tension for so long. Today, many film historians and critics believe that these technical failures actually improved Jaws in ways no one could have predicted. What started as a frustrating problem ended up shaping one of the most effective thrillers ever made. The less the shark appeared, the more terrifying it became. In an ironic twist, a broken machine helped create one of the most iconic and fear-filled films in cinema history. Another reason the more gruesome scenes were removed from Jaws was that the mechanical shark, nicknamed Bruce, constantly malfunctioned during filming. But was the movie actually the first version of this successful story? Or did something come before it, like a novel? If so, how convinced were the producers after reading it? Let's find out. From Midnight Read to Hollywood Nightmare. The story of Jaws actually began long before the famous movie hit the screen. It started with a discovery made by two Hollywood producers, Richard Zanuck and David Brown. While searching for fresh material, they came across an unpublished novel written by Peter Benchley. At that time, the book had not yet become famous, and there was no guarantee it would ever reach a wide audience. Still, something about the story immediately caught their attention. Once they began reading it, they were hooked. In fact, they reportedly finished the entire book in just one night, unable to put it down. The idea of a massive shark terrorizing a quiet coastal town felt both simple and powerful at the same time. It had tension, danger, and a sense of mystery that they believed could work perfectly on the big screen. Without wasting time, Zanuck and Brown made a bold decision. They quickly bought the film rights to the novel, convinced they had found something truly special. Their instincts proved right in the end. When Peter Benchley's novel was finally published, it quickly became a massive bestseller, drawing readers from all over the world. People were hooked by its tense storytelling and the frightening idea of a hidden sea predator attacking without warning. The book's huge success made one thing clear. There was already a large, eager audience waiting for its story to come alive on the big screen as a film adaptation. However, what seemed like a smart and exciting business move at first soon revealed its hidden challenges. Neither producer fully understood just how difficult it would be to turn the story into a movie. On paper, it sounded straightforward: a shark, a beach town, and a group of people trying to survive. But once production began, the reality was far more complicated. Filming Jaws on the open ocean was a constant struggle. The sea was unpredictable, with sudden weather changes that could stop shooting without warning. Cameras, boats, and equipment were difficult to control in the moving water, making every scene feel like a small battle. On top of that, the film demanded strong tension and believable fear, which was hard to create with the limited technology of the time, turning every shot into a test of patience and creativity. What had started as an exciting opportunity to adapt a popular novel slowly transformed into something much bigger and more demanding. Instead of being a smooth production, Jaws became one of the most difficult and stressful film projects Hollywood had ever seen. Yet, this struggle would eventually shape the movie into something far greater than anyone involved had originally imagined. The producers of the film were convinced it would be a success, so they quickly purchased the film rights after reading the unpublished novel. But was the production really easy, or did it face serious challenges along the way? If so, what problems did they encounter while making the movie? Let's uncover the intriguing details. The production nightmare. At just 26 years old, Steven Spielberg suddenly found himself in charge of a film production that was far more chaotic and demanding than anyone had expected. What was originally planned as a relatively small and manageable project quickly turned into a massive challenge that tested every part of his skill, patience, and creativity. Instead of a smooth shoot, Jaws became a constant struggle from the very beginning. Almost every aspect of the production seemed to work against the crew. Bad weather regularly interrupted filming on the open ocean, making it difficult to shoot even the simplest scenes. Strong winds, rough waves, and unpredictable conditions meant that the team often had to stop work entirely and wait for the sea to calm. On top of that, equipment failures became a daily problem. Cameras malfunctioned, technical gear broke down, and the mechanical shark often refused to work when it was needed most. These constant setbacks created a chain reaction of delays that pushed the entire schedule far beyond what had been planned. As production problems kept growing, the film's budget started climbing out of control. What was originally planned as a modest project costing under $4 million soon spiraled to nearly $12 million. For a movie in that era, this was a massive increase. Every delay with filming, every technical setback, and every reshoot added more pressure on the crew. Uncertainty hung over the entire project, and at times, it even seemed like the film might never be finished. Inside the studio, tension slowly turned into real anxiety. Executives who once fully believed in the project began to doubt it could succeed. The production was becoming more expensive, and the constant technical problems only made things worse. What started as a promising film now looked like a risky gamble that might fail at the box office. There was growing fear that Jaws might not earn back its cost, and some even worried it could hurt the studio's reputation badly. For Spielberg himself, the pressure was deeply personal. At only 26 years old, he was still early in his career, and this was one of his first major films. As the problems continued without clear solutions, he began to fear that this one project could define his future in Hollywood in the worst possible way. There were moments when he genuinely worried that Jaws might end his career before it had the chance to truly begin. Yet, despite all the chaos, delays, and rising tension, Spielberg continued to push forward, determined to finish the film against all odds, even when success seemed far from certain. Producing and directing Jaws came with many challenges from the very beginning, some of which even threatened whether the film would ever make it to the screen. But how were these challenges handled? What strategies were used to turn such a troubled production into a success? Now, let's uncover the creative decisions that transformed Jaws into an unforgettable masterpiece of suspense. From chaos to genius. While Jaws was struggling through endless production problems, rising costs, and constant delays, something unexpected began to happen behind the scenes. The same pressure that nearly broke the film also started to push the creative team toward new ideas that would completely reshape the final result. Instead of slowing everything down, the chaos forced the filmmakers to adapt, think quickly, and find smarter ways to tell the story. One of the biggest changes came with the casting of Richard Dreyfuss. He joined the project only a few months before filming began, stepping into the role of oceanographer Matt Hooper. His late arrival meant he had to quickly adjust to a fast-moving and unpredictable set, but his energy and fresh approach brought a new spark to the film. At the same time, the script was anything but fixed. Writer Carl Gottlieb had to keep rewriting Jaws while filming was already happening, constantly adjusting dialogue and scenes based on what the crew could actually shoot on the open water. Instead of sticking to a fixed script, the story kept changing day by day, shaped by weather, technical problems, and ocean conditions. In many ways, the film was being written in real time, blending original ideas with whatever the sea and production challenges allowed. Another key moment in the film's development came from composer John Williams. He introduced a very simple two-note musical theme to represent the shark. At first, Steven Spielberg didn't take it seriously. He even thought it might be a joke because of how minimal and almost playful it sounded when first played on the piano. However, Williams believed the idea was essential, and time proved him right when that simple sound became one of the most iconic and frightening pieces of film music ever created. The slow, repeating notes gradually built tension, suggesting unseen danger beneath the surface, and each return of the motif made audiences feel deeper fear, as suspense grew stronger without showing the threat directly on screen. All these creative changes gradually shaped Jaws into a film far stronger than anyone had first expected. Even while its darkest and most graphic scenes were being cut, the suspense only grew deeper. Last-minute casting decisions, ongoing script changes, and the unforgettable two-note music all blended, giving the movie a raw, tense, and unpredictable feeling that made everything seem more real and deeply unsettling for audiences watching it. In the end, what could have been a production destroyed by problems instead became a film shaped by them. The challenges did not weaken Jaws, they sharpened it, helping turn it into a gripping and intense experience that no one involved had fully expected at the start. Beyond finding ways to produce Jaws despite its many challenges and removing some of its more graphic scenes, how successful was the film? Was it only well-rated without winning any major awards, or did it go on to earn prestigious recognition? And what did critics have to say about it? Let's find out. The record-breaking hit. When Jaws was being shaped in the editing room, there was a real fear among studio executives that cutting out some of the most disturbing and graphic material would weaken the film. After all, many believed that the more shocking and violent the movie was, the more powerful it would feel. Removing those intense scenes seemed risky, and there was uncertainty about whether audiences would still be scared without them. But when the film was finally released, those worries quickly disappeared. Instead of becoming weaker, Jaws became a massive success in every possible way. It did not just perform well at the box office, it became a cultural event. Audiences across the world rushed to see it, and many left the theater with a new, lingering fear of what might be hiding beneath the ocean's surface. The movie spread quickly through conversation, word of mouth, and media attention, turning it into one of the biggest cinematic sensations of its time. Critics also responded with strong praise. They admired how the film built tension so carefully, using silence, pacing, and character reactions instead of relying heavily on graphic visuals. Rather than showing everything directly, the movie allowed fear to grow slowly in the viewer's mind. This style of storytelling was seen as fresh, bold, and highly effective. The success of Jaws was not only seen at the box office, but also recognized by major film awards. The movie won Academy Awards for its sharp editing, powerful sound design, and John Williams's unforgettable musical score, which played a huge role in building tension and fear. It was also nominated for Best Picture, proving that it was not just a hit thriller, but one of the most respected and admired films of its time. Looking back, there is an interesting twist in how the film's final form came together. The very scenes that were removed, those considered too disturbing or intense, may have actually helped improve the movie by their absence. By not showing everything, the film forced audiences to imagine the danger for themselves, and that imagination proved even more powerful than anything that could have been shown on screen. In the end, Jaws showed that fear does not always need to be loud, graphic, or fully visible. Sometimes, the strongest impact comes from restraint. By focusing on suspense instead of excess, Steven Spielberg created a thriller that not only defined an era, but also influenced filmmakers for generations to come, proving that what is left unseen can often be far more frightening than what is revealed. Beyond earning numerous awards, Jaws was widely praised by critics for its suspenseful storytelling, and audiences embraced it as one of the most frightening films ever made. But what lasting legacy did the movie leave in Hollywood? Did it set the standard for future films in the industry? Now, let's explore the ghost version of Jaws. The legacy Jaws left behind. Even though audiences around the world only saw the final version of Jaws, the more disturbing and extreme version that was once planned never completely disappeared. Pieces of it still survive, scattered like clues from a forgotten story. You can find hints of it in old production photos, early script drafts, behind-the-scenes notes, and the many stories shared by the cast and crew who worked on the film. These fragments give a glimpse into a version of Jaws that was far more intense, more violent, and possibly even more unsettling than what people experienced in theaters. Over time, it becomes clear that what we now know as Jaws was shaped just as much by what was removed as by what was kept. Steven Spielberg and the studio made difficult decisions during editing, choosing to cut away some of the most graphic and disturbing material. These choices were not easy, especially considering how much effort had already gone into filming those scenes. But instead of focusing on shock and gore, they shifted the film's direction towards something different: suspense, tension, and imagination. That decision changed everything. By showing less and suggesting more, Jaws became a film that worked deeply on the viewer's mind. The fear was no longer just on the screen. It was created inside the audience's imagination. The ocean became more mysterious, the shark more frightening, and every moment of silence more intense. This approach helped turn the movie into something far bigger than a simple creature feature. It became a carefully built experience of fear that grew stronger the longer it stayed unseen. Jaws didn't just become a hit movie. It changed Hollywood forever. It taught filmmakers a powerful lesson. Suspense can be far more terrifying than non-stop action or graphic violence. Instead of showing everything, hiding the danger can make it feel even more real and threatening in the viewer's mind. This idea went on to inspire many movies that followed, especially in horror and thriller genres, where fear is often built through imagination rather than what is actually seen on screen. Despite its huge success and lasting fame, Jaws still leaves people wondering. Many fans, even today, can't help but ask what the movie would have felt like if the original darker version had been released. What if those deleted scenes had never been cut, and audiences had seen a more brutal, shocking story unfold on screen? That lingering, what could have been, keeps the film's mystery alive even decades later. No one will ever fully know what the complete, uncut version of Jaws truly looked like. That mystery, however, is part of what keeps the film alive even today. Only small fragments and stories remain, leaving the rest to imagination. Strangely, this lost version feels even more haunting than what was shown on screen, because the human mind often fears what it cannot clearly see or fully understand. So, what do you think about the deleted version of Jaws? Could including those erased scenes have improved the film's rating? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.